Have you ever been curious about my logo design and branding process? Join me for an intimate and detailed review of my process from start to finish. We will develop various logo concepts, finalizing our type, icons and layout. We will then explore color palettes and options for a logo. Creating a brand package or branding standards manual is an essential step. Ours will include local variations, color palettes, local alternatives, and additional branded assets we can use for brand extension. Finally, we will use our brand manual to create a business card, letterhead, and other assets. You only need to be somewhat familiar with Adobe Illustrator, so do not feel you need to be an expert Illustrator user to get a ton out of this class. So let's learn together. So I'm coming up with a few ideas for a fictitious company so that we can practice developing a branding package that will extend to all of our marketing needs. So we're gonna do a logo design. But branding, as we learned, is much more than that. We're gonna have a design elements that we can extend to print campaigns and online digital campaigns. But we're going to have a branding standards manual that we're going to be able to present to the client. So we're going to really come up with this entire full branding package and go through kind of a real-world process of how I do this and how it really I recommend doing it. So the fictitious company is going to be a life coaching business. And the reason I chose this is there's a lot of life coaches, business coaches out there looking for branding. And I wanted to pick something that's pretty common, that you see a lot of people requesting branding packages for. So just kind of trying to make it real world and applicable to what you're going to be doing. So I came up with a kind of a little fake name called malleable. And when something is malleable, usually think of a gold or a metal that's able to be hammered or pressed permanently out of shape without breaking or cracking. So, gold is a metal that you can melt down. And you could be able to form it to any kind of form. And I thought that was a great creative name for life coaching. Because when you seek life coaching, you don't want to change who you are. Like with a gold bar. You don't want to change who you are. But you want to form it into something better. And into something new. So I thought this was kind of a clever, creative name. Just kind of going through the whole branding process of how I came up with the name. So we're going to start here with the name. And so a lot of times, they'll call this the creative brief. So a client will approach you. And they'll already have their name developed. And they have their company obviously developed. And it's up to you to make this come to life. And so I just kind of have some main elements. Let's say the client gave me some of these elements. They gave me the name. They gave me their names. Sometimes people want to integrate their name into their marketing or their logo, brand mark, and so that's always good to have on here. Business type and kind of some target markets. And really quick little target market demographic, so CEOs, small business owners, and personal people. So really this person, Sophia, is going to be doing life coaching for a wide variety of people. But mostly people in the business and professional world. So it's gonna be a little bit of a high-end life coaching. Trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. And their legacy and everything. So what I like to do is go ahead. I have the name developed, which is half the battle. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this. I'm just gonna leave this here for now. So I can kind of think about it as I really start to work on the design. So I just opened a 8 and a/2 by 11 inch document. Adobe Illustrator. And I'm just gonna play around with some font choices. A lot of times I'd like to do, before I mess with symbols and any kind of actual logo design symbols, I like to take the typography and play around and see what I can do with the type. And that'll help inspire me for maybe a symbol to integrate. And inside of it, you're gonna be looking at my raw design process. So I have not thought about a certain design for this before filming, because I wanted to show you the process of what I go through to find the right fit. So this is option number 1. So let's go ahead and play around. It's getting my type tool. It's gonna highlight it. And let's see. Let's play around with some font choices. Let me slide this over so I can actually see a live change of all the type. So right now it's just on your standard Helvetica. Let me select this and then go up here. So I'm just going to the list of my kind of standard fonts. I have to figure out, do I like all caps? I don't think I like all caps. I think for this I really like it all lowercase. It's softer. It's more gentle. When it comes to life coaching, that's kind of how you want to approach it. You don't want to be angry or all caps or bold. You want to have a little bit more of a softer approach, especially as a female coach. So let's continue to. So we've already established a lot already just there. Just going through some of these and realizing I don't think all caps is gonna work. So now we need to figure out, do we want to have a sans serif or a serif type font? So let's just pick this Garamond for right now. And let's compare. So it's copy and paste. And now we're going to find a sans serif font to compare that we like to the other one. And if we find another serif font that we like better, we can always replace it. So I know a typical one is Railway. I always use that. This one's pretty bold. That's a good comparison, okay. So what do we like better? Of course this is italics. So that can kind of throw us off too. So let's copy and paste and do a non-italic. So we're just gonna be able to compare and see what we like better. Let me move this over. Okay, so let's find a serif font. That's beautiful. Oh. That's beautiful. What font is that? Handley Script, of course. Need if you're going to use it for a logo design. Need to make sure that you purchase the rights. If you need to, some of them are free and open to use. But for profit, use some fonts you do need to purchase, and so just look into that. You can Google this and see if you need to purchase to be able to use it in a logo design, okay. So we're kind of getting some examples. I like the script. So let's keep going and make this smaller. And let's copy and paste, keep going. Thank you, okay. And this is really helping us set the mood and the tone for our logo. So the font is everything. And I'll probably spend. Oh, I'm really liking a script type font for this. I know that's really in right now. I don't want to do it super popular all the time. But I am liking how some of this is looking, so. Okay, just anything I like, I'm just gonna leave it and then copy and paste and keep going, okay. I like this. Die dots are really nice classic font. Let me try italic. Of course we already have italic over here on this one. And I can already tell you I like this one better. So I just delete it if I find something I like better. Don't need to have two italic serif fonts, so. Let's make this bold and let's try in all caps. Just I don't want to write off all caps right away. So I'm just going to my character panel. Your character panel could be along the side. But right now it's right here. Let me actually. Character, let me bring up my character panel. Your graph. Your graph. Okay, let's just go ahead and keep it up here. So I'm gonna go and. You want to do all caps and go to character. And there's a little drop down the menu right here. Just go ahead and click on it. And you'll be able to switch your font to all caps. So character. And you go to option panel and then all caps. You can do that just if you didn't know, thank you. So that has kind of a high fashion kind of look. Let's try a sans serif. Let's just take a sample of this one. And let's go to character. And do all caps, okay. And let's put some spacing. Let's do a dramatic spacing on one. Just to try something different, okay. So just spending 5 to 10 minutes. Figuring out which ones I kind of like. Let me do one more, okay. Because you can always delete these. If I don't like how it's going. Yeah, I like that one. Okay, so here's our options so far. I'm going to start to eliminate ones that I do not like. It's going to slide this to the left. I'm not a big fan. I wonder if I collapse the spacing on that. Would it be better? Yes, so that's gonna stay. I think this can stay. I like this hand-drawn script. And I almost wonder if I can even do something myself with a hand script for this type of brand. That might be something I can explore. I don't like this specific type. But I'm going to keep it in here. To remind me to explore that option. That's too messy. Too busy, almost looks like a marker. That has some potential. I need to work on it. And both of these are okay. So we're able to kind of eliminate a few options here. And I'm gonna slide this to the left. I can work on that as option a little bit. But I really like this top one. Let's see if I can continue. I'm going to drag these over to the right. You can just do whatever system you want to have. I'm going to start working on some of these in isolation, okay. So does that have potential? Let's put some spacing. Some kerning between the lettering. I just feel like that the font. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom in on this one. I just feel like the font is too skinny. The stroke on some of these. I just don't think it's gonna translate when it's really zoomed out like this. So it's not thick enough for a logo. So let's go ahead and eliminate that as an option. I'll just go ahead and drag this one. I really like this. I wonder if we could play around with the type a little bit. So I don't like how the M is the lowercase here. Let me see what an uppercase looks like. That's beautiful. So let's copy and paste. And continue to work on this version. I'm actually gonna be making this a little bit smaller. And I can even cut this out. So I'm just highlighting my M. And I'm gonna go up to edit and cut. Or can do your keyboard shortcut. And I'm taking the type tool. And I'm just gonna paste that M back. So now I can kind of customize the size of this M a little bit. And play with the spacing like we've done before. Even draw a line here so I know where my base height is. There's kind of where everything rests. So let me see if I can't keep this M on that same line. Play around, I want the M to be overpowering. That's my only concern. So I may have to do a custom M and tweak it. That could be what I do, I might do that. So it's very easy to get sidetracked. And start working on one concept before you really feel like it's gonna be what you wanna work on. So I'm gonna take a step back and bring in some of my other ones. I'm gonna keep both of these for now. So it's kind of my option. My iteration one. I can just put the number 1 here. Make that a Helvetica lights. That's option number 1. Let's do bold. It's one that we're gonna keep around. So let's see what our option 2 would be. We're gonna pare these down till we get the final one that we like. It may be a while till we get to that point. So here's option 2. How can I play with font? I like to do this and not zoom in too much. If I'm not doing detailed work, I want to be able to see how it looks. At about this size. This is a great size to preview it at. If you zoom in and do it at a close size, you're not gonna be able to see it. How most people end up seeing it on marketing campaigns, etc. So let's play around some different weights. I don't know if I like the italic work. It's a little bit difficult. But I think both of those are potentials. Let's do regular. Let's make that light. That's option 2. Let's go down and do option 3. And I do all of my logo designs in black and white. Until I have a concept starting to develop. Then I'll start to integrate color. So here's option 3. Let's make these a different color just so that we can differentiate it from the logo. There we go. So these have potential with like a symbol perhaps. I don't like this one. I kind of like the serifs. With this particular type of business, I think it looks higher end. It looks nice. Let's play around with spacing a little bit. So let me copy and paste. Let me play around with tracking or kerning. Can make it tight. I can make it really tight and see what happens. Well, that's an option. Nah. Let me bring in the spacing a little bit. And then I think I'll be happy. So let's do 400. That's great. That's an option. Let me play around with lowercase. Take all caps off and just go into character options and then taking all caps off. Let me tighten the spacing. And even make it italic. That has potential too. So I'm gonna keep that one around. Let's do one more option. 'Cause we really don't want to have too many at this stage. We want to start paring them down slowly. So let's come over here. And see what our options we have left. Did I use them all? And there's the ones I did not like. So let's explore. One more option or actually I like these 3. Less is more. So these are the 3 options. We're gonna continue to refine and explore. And then we're gonna start to see if a symbol is gonna match some of these and just kind of going through the process of that. So I wanna explore a symbol. I think this is kind of a standalone font. So this will be an option that will remain maybe. Typographic only, type only. And so I wanna maybe explore some kind of symbol. For this one and also the third option as well. So let's go ahead, we're just gonna slide these off. We don't need those anymore. Let's make this option a little bit bigger. And let's explore a symbol perhaps. And so this is when we can toggle our grid. So we're gonna go to view and put our grid on show grid. And this will help us when coming up with the symbol. So let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. And let's play around with something here. So I'm just gonna take my pin tool. And I'd love to do kind of a really cool geometric shape that can go along with life coaching. Something that does like an interconnected web. So we're gonna play around maybe with some triangles. And try to figure something that looks cool. So let's just do a diamond. I have not planned ahead anything, so this is kind of me experimenting. I'm just gonna copy and paste this little triangle. And let me go to Object Transform. I'm just to rotate it. Let's do 45 degrees. Or what I'm doing with the grid. I'm just kind of matching things up. Let me create a new triangle here. Or a new rectangle shape. It's probably easier to do. So that's an option. Let me copy and paste. And I got a group. Right-click and group this little element together. I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. And maybe place it right in this area. That almost looks.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I like that too much. I don't wanna get too detailed. So I'm gonna go online to find a little bit of geometric shape inspiration. And I'll be right back. So as you can see, I was playing around with some basic geometric shapes. And I went on Pinterest. And is able to kind of get a little bit inspired by some of these shapes. And you never want to copy someone else's design. So I'm trying to be inspired, yet create something on my own. And I love how a lot of this uses gold, which goes really well with my malleable theme, with the metals and golds that I was gonna go for. So this kind of reiterates and reinforces kind of this branding direction. I definitely want to go in. And I played around some basic shapes and I found this kind of cool combination of a triangle and a polygon. And kind of put them together. And makes almost the 3D gym shape. And I really like it. So I got to go through the process of how I created that. And let me go back and put everything on default. So I can show you all the step of the process that I did with that. Okay. So what I did is there's actually in your shapes panel. There's a handy dandy polygon tool. That's already there for you. So you don't have to sit there and create a polygon tool or polygon shape. And go ahead and drag that here. And I'm just gonna create a simple triangle. That's gonna cover some of these corners here. So I'm gonna do every other corner. So I'm gonna click here. Skip that one. Click here, skipping that one. And I'm coming over here. And then I'm gonna complete my shape. So it's really just two shapes in one. It's really simple. And so you'll notice these kind of let me zoom in just a little bit here. Notice these really hard pointy edges. And that's because there's some settings over here in your stroke panel that you can adjust around them a little bit to make them softer. So I'm selecting both objects. And I'm gonna go down here to my corner. And instead of having a straight join, I'm gonna actually do a round join for the corner. So those corners are sharp. Corners disappear. So if you ever do against design, you want to soften it a little bit, you can select all and just go to the round. And it makes a nice round appearance. So this is like a little trick for you and your stroke panel. So now that I'm happy with my shape, I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of the grid system just for now. So I'm gonna hide the grid. And I'm gonna take a couple of these shapes that I'm not interested in using right now. Just kind of shove them off to the side. I'm not interested in that. This kind of. I was experimenting and I just. Anytime you come up with a shape or design, and you know you can't use it for this project, this is not fitting. But I like it. I'll go ahead and save it. So I'll throw it into another pile of shapes. Save it for another local design project. You just never know when a symbol or shape you came up with might be useful later. So these are two different shapes. Go ahead and get rid of this one. I'm gonna play around with the stroke on this a little bit. I wanna have it be a nice thickness. And the thicker the stroke, the better, because when this is ever reduced small, you're gonna be able to make out the small lines. I do not like using really thin lines and logo design. So thick lines is what you're looking for. So that's kind of a good stroke size. So it's a 7-point stroke right here. Same thing for this. I really like this. I thought maybe I could do a variation of the logo, where we put the name in here or just put the M. So that could be a second symbol option. So let's go ahead and zoom out. And see what we have here. Oops. That's too much, 250%. And so this is kind of a mess. But we're gonna start peeling some of this away. And really finalizing. So I really like looking at our font options here. And I'm looking at the ones that we tucked over here as well. I like this one. We grab that for the symbol over here. So let me make this a little bit smaller. And when you make something strong, smaller that has a live stroke on it, it gets bigger as it gets smaller and it gets smaller as it gets bigger. So sometimes, to prevent that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy and paste my shape. So I can keep it live path right here. I'm just gonna tuck it over here. It's always good to just slide things to the side. You can always grab it later. I need to select all. And if I really like the thickness, I'm gonna go to Object, Path Outline Stroke. So when you outline the stroke, it makes it an object now. So I can no longer edit the stroke. But now it's its own object. So I can make it bigger or smaller without it changing. So that's great. And so I thought, let's see, let's match. I'm just getting the eyedropper tool. And now instead of using black, I like to switch to kind of a dark gray, which helps me emulate the possibility of a color. 'Cause black is very harsh and that might change what I use, so I can just switching to a dark gray. At this point, I'm gonna do this as another concept. And sliding that over. And let me do balancing, so this is. So I'm just gonna do bound. And I like to do logo design 7 zooming in. Like I said before, keep a nice distance so you can know if it looks good when it's small. So I'm just playing around. Do I want to put an angle on this perhaps? There's a little bit of space here. I can maybe tuck it in there. Or make it smaller with a small little icon. And so now we're gonna do the same thing we were doing before. And we're gonna just copy and paste. And try out different options. It's kind of a large symbol. Copy and paste. Let's try this as another popular arrangement. Put a symbol to the left and the type on the right. So let's play around the sizing on this one. So that's one option. This is when you really get to have fun. And do a lot of different iterations or variations. So maybe I can put like a divider line here. That could look kind of professional and nice. Like the symbol little bit bigger. So you can make out what it is. Maybe align it back where it was. And I think I have one. This is why I saved this one over here. I go back into my path outline stroke and group it. That's why I saved this one. Oh, I kind of like the triangle that way. That's kind of cool right there. I need to make sure I can always bring back the grid tool and make sure it's lined up perfectly. Or I can zoom in and just get a box here. Or let me do the grid tool, that's gonna be a lot easier. View show grid. Now we're just lining it up. Okay, now hide grid. Grid kind of bothers me when I'm doing layouts. I'm just gonna zoom out a little more, 150. Perfect. I'm just starting to get balance. I'm tweaking, I make that a tad bit smaller. I really like this so far. That's getting too crazy. Unless I make it smaller. I'm not liking that, so that gets removed. That gets removed. So far these are the only ones that have made it. With the symbol. I really like the symbol to the left. So I think we're gonna keep that as our option. And we can even play around with it. Have another iteration or another version. Iteration is just a fancy name for options. What if I fill in certain portions of this little geometric shape? Not sure if that's gonna look good or not. But we're just seeing what other versions we can create. You never know which one The client is actually gonna pick. You'd be surprised. They don't always pick your favorite one. Sometimes they'll pick the last one you did. And sometimes they'll pick the very first version you did. You just don't know. That's interesting. If I added an angle to it. I don't know if I like that. The look's almost too sci-fi to me. I'm kind of going for high-end coaching. Kind of a cool geometric shape. I think that's just too weird. Worth a try. Now I'm just saying what's out there. So let's play one more time. With a different font choice, so like these. My favorite are probably these are the same. So let's try the different font. Skip that gray. Oh, that looks nice, make that a little smaller. Let's try another one. Let's grab one of our fonts. Didn't we have some along here? I think that needs to stand alone. We already established that. Let me try this one. Let me do in all caps. I'm liking the overall high-end kind of feel. This is starting to take on. Maybe we don't need the line. Want it to be unique. 'Cause in the coaching world, there's a lot of competition. So to have a brand or mark that is very attention-grabbing. And I think the unique characteristic of this logo. I was actually wanting to adapt some gold into these lines. So I think that's gonna really help it come together. So we're gonna work on that next. So let's work on color palette. And then we'll be able to bring that gold effect I mentioned earlier in. And this is starting to get a little bit distracting. So I'm just gonna hide that over here. Kind of clean up my workspace. So I just feel like I don't have a lot of distractions. It's always so important. Of course, you always want to save your work. I've lost lots of work by getting way too into my work. And not saving enough. Do I use this italic? Let me try this italic. Of course, you always want to continue to tweak. And sometimes you just have to tell yourself to stop. But I love that as an option. Right there. So I'm gonna tuck this away. I don't really need that at the moment. I kind of my element here, so there's some really great options. And so I'm gonna go ahead and do the color palette. And see what starts to work here. So I'm gonna just grab the rectangle tool. This is all about building a branding standards manual. This is all gonna be a part of it. You're gonna have your color swatches, your color palette, your font choices, your symbols, any kind of textures or gradients you use. So I'm gonna come up with a really cool color palette. Of course, you could do a mood board and bring that into Adobe Color, and be able to pick that out of your mood board. But I've already kind of went online, did some research, and I have a couple of ideas kind of floating in my head with some color options. And I thought like a really dark, rich navy would look really good paired with gold. So gold is a definite color option. So I'm gonna play around some different types of navies and blues. I'm just working on a couple of options, maybe bringing in almost like an emerald color would look really cool. Actually with gold. Maybe like a purple. Maybe bring in a little. I think that's probably overused. Let's do. So I think these colors would all look really nice. Paired with it a light gold. So that's kind of, these are awesome options. So I'm gonna go ahead and do primary. That's gonna be our primary color options. This is gonna be our gold color options. We may end up doing a gradient here or using a texture. We don't know yet. So this is where we get to have fun with creating gradients. Let me go ahead and zoom in. And we're gonna create a gold gradient. So I'm gonna go over to my gradient swatches. Let's see, here it is, my gradient tab. If you do not see it, go to Window and click on Gradient. I'm gonna go ahead and drag it out here, so you can see what I'm doing. We're gonna go ahead and highlight this first box. And I'm gonna go down here to this gradient. And just gonna double click. I'm gonna be able to add certain gold elements. So I can add, maybe this is just 2-color transition. I could do a 3-color for color. I make it a really complicated gold. Or really simple gold. So let's do a simple gold. I'm gonna double click this and looks like it's set to grayscale. And sometimes it sets a new swatch or gradient to grayscale. Just go up here to the Options tab and switch it to. Let's match our color profile. So RGB, also switch to RGB. And let's find like a deep rich. Let's go a little more yellow in there. And if I want to get a color close to this, I can click it once and then click next to it. And it's going to load the same color. And I can pull down on this to eliminate that gradient. It's just like Photoshop. And I'm going to double click. And make this a shade darker. Let's make that a little bit darker. I don't want it to be brown. I want it to be. Have a little more gray in it almost. So let's bring a little more green. That's an option. So let's see if there's already a gradient that we can load. I'm gonna go over to my swatches panel. Oh, let me get I closed my gradient window by accident. So let me just bring that window back. Drag that back over here. I'm gonna get my swatches panel. And I'm gonna see if there's any default gradients I can load in. So I'm clicking here on my library tab or my library options. And I'm gonna go down to gradients. And there's a lot of preloaded gradients. You can't see him there off the screen. But I could show you a screenshot. But let me do gems and jewels. Let's see if there's any gradients or color swatches. I think would look really cool. Or second option. Okay, so I'm just highlighting my second box. Oh, that's pretty, but it's almost a little too peachy. I don't want skin color. That's a little too much. I need it to pair really well. That almost has a copper vibe, which could work. So I'm gonna keep that. And keep moving on to my next option. Let's load some more. Let's do gradients. Let's do metals. And let's see what kind of options we have here. So this is a gradient pack that I've used a lot in the past. This is what we're gonna load into Adobe Illustrator to kind of give us a couple of pre-made gradients. We don't have to sit there and painstakingly create a gradients. We can modify a few of these to our liking. So it's actually it's by Trabs on Sport. So it's a vector metal pack. I think if you just type in this and you do gradient pack, you'll be able to find it online. So to load this in, what I did is I'm on my swatches panel. I'm gonna go down to my library tab. And remember how we were going to gradients. And we were grabbing a couple of different options. There's actually an option at the very bottom. It's off the screen. But you'll be able to see it to the left of your screen right now. And something called Other Library. Go ahead and click on that. And then you can double-click your file that you downloaded. And you'll be able to load it in. So this is what the panel that opened as soon as I loaded it in. So let's try a couple of these as well. I think that might be a little dark. But let's copy and paste. Let's get a couple more options. Let's go ahead and get everything set up, so we can play around with it. Let's giving some nice white space between these. And let's zoom in about 200%. And I'm gonna start with my primary colors. And I'm actually gonna just I'm just bringing them down here so I can use the eyedropper tool to better select and have fun. So here's all of our swatches. And let's begin. We'll start with this first one. Let's start with a type. And let's select that kind of rich blue. And let's kind of play around with some gradient options. Of course we could select our gradient tool and change the direction. I like to do diagonal because it feels more realistic than a straight across. Let's do that. That's an option. We could change this little line. We could either make that a gradient or make that the dark blue. So that's interesting. We can also do a box, a colored background to see if we like it on a colored background. 'Cause a lot of times in advertising, you want to put it on a different colored background. Gonna make this white. Selecting our type in our little vertical line. And this will help me determine if I really like the gold on top too. A little spacing there. Not feeling that particular one. But let's keep playing around with other options. That might be too dark. Too light. Let me do a diagonal stroke. I like that a lot. Let's see if it translates on a light background. Click on the gradient, then it'll let me do it. So it's a little light there. So we could have two different versions of this logo, where the gradient is a little darker on the white background version. And you're gonna end up with probably 20 different versions to send to the client. In terms of white background, dark background, transparent background, you're gonna have to have a lot of different versions. So let me play with some darker. Let's see, so we're gonna want to take the same one. Let's go ahead and double click on our gradient. Or go to our gradient tab. And let's make all of these just a hair darker. So I'm just bringing everything back. Keeping the same color, just darkening each step about the same amount. I'm just eyeballing this for now. Making it ever so slightly darker. It has a little bit of a dull look. Let's keep going. Let's try a different font. I'm kind of liking this a little bit more now that I'm looking at it. We select it all and try navy. And this is when adding a little bit of texture might come in handy. 'Cause this is just flat color swatches. There's not like a texture over top of it. Or kind of a rusted look, or I'll show you in Photoshop. Kind of applying some texture could really add some neat effects to this. So let's see if I can't add a little drop shadow. So I'm gonna go to Effect. I'm gonna go down to Drop Shadow. It's gonna do a little drop shadow. That's a little too much. So I'm just changing the blur and the distance. Maybe I'm just doing it by hand. I don't want the opacity to be very strong. So I'm just gonna do 22%. And let's do the same thing with the type. You know, that could add kind of some neat effects. Zoom out, I'm not feeling the green. So let's check out the next color, kind of a light blue. That's beautiful. I like that shade of blue. I'm not sure which one I like better. Let's keep going. Let's try a different up here, a different one up here. Let's bring in this one. I'm just gonna make it all white. That's a pretty versatile logo. I kinda like a logo that's versatile. Bring over our swatches. You're gonna feel like a mess sometimes with all these different elements on your artboard. But that's all. The process of creating and designing is messy. Okay, so let's get going. Oh, I have an idea. Uh-oh. Okay, so polygon tool. I'm gonna make that gold, okay? And maybe I'm gonna try this silver. To have like a gold and silver. You know, maybe angle it, I like it kinda angled. So I was doing a couple of versions of these little geometric shapes. I wonder if I could actually make the stroke thicker. So I went and grabbed the one where I did not outline the path. And so I can be able to make that path a little bit thicker or the stroke a little bit thicker. We bring this back over. And let me go to the stroke. And I'm gonna increase it just a little bit. And I'm also gonna try a little trick here. I'm gonna copy and paste this to have another version. And there's kind of a neat trick. If you go to Effect, and you go to Distort and Transform, there's several different little tricks and little filters you can apply to your shapes to add a little bit, some interesting effects. So I'm gonna go down to Pucker and Bloat. And I'm gonna click on Preview. And just kind of play around. You can create a lot of really interesting effects this way. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna move it ever so slightly into the negative. You'll see it kind of created a neat little curve to my shape. So I can go around and see just playing with different options over here on my stroke. You can see where the stroke is. Get it a line stroke to the center. A line stroke to the inside and outside. So you can play with those as well. I like the middle option. So that's just another option that you can have. Kind of gives a little bit more of a curve there. Maybe I can reduce the weight on this one. And you can actually apply brushes as well to your stroke. It doesn't have to be the standard one. So let's go to brushes. Let's see. I don't even think I have that option panel open. There's brushes right here. So this is your brushes panel. And here's some basic ones that are already loaded. You can load more by going to your library and loading some different ones. So artistic. Let's do ink. Here's some different brushes we can apply to our path. Let's do a paintbrush. And a lot of these. I have to reduce the weight a little bit. So that's got a neat hand brush look. And do a darker ink like that once again. I think with the brushes you can download some online. That's got a neat effect. So if I like it, I'm gonna copy and paste my original and keep going. That's a little too messy. Those are a little messy, so I'm done with that one. So I'm just gonna delete that option. Oops. And this is the calligraphic one. And I have to reduce my weight. If it looks really thick like that, go ahead and reduce your weight. That looks nice. That adds a little bit more roundedness to it. Just playing around. Oops. These have a little bit of an angle to it. Let's go back to the one I like. Think it was this one. You can see a little bit of a difference. Let me make it a little thicker. That's too thick. Let's go and close my brushes. So we got a couple of options here. So I kind of like this one. So let's throw these over for another time. And now we can go back. Let me make a copy of this one too. Just in case. And I want to make it ever so slightly thicker. So I'm just gonna go 0.3. 3 points. Making it thicker actually. Let me go back. As when you're really getting detailed here. Pick it to 8. And now I'm gonna go to Object Path Outline Stroke. So now I have it as an object again. And now I can take one of these. Copy and paste it. And I can go ahead and grab this gradient that I used. Delete this one. And let's see how a much thicker shape looks. Almost wonder if it's too thick now. I kind of like the thin look. And this is why you do these experiments. So you can find out what you do and you don't like. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Let's do 300%. Kind of see these a little bit better. And I almost wonder if I could do a combination of strokes. So let me bring the one back that I did. This is why I make copies of things. Paste it and let's do one thin, one thick. So let's ungroup. We can make this one thinner. The outside. And make this one notch thinner. Or make that thicker and this thinner. There we go. I like that. I'm gonna copy so I can have a copy over here. I'm gonna do the object path. And I'm gonna outline that stroke perfect. I think this might be the one. Go ahead and delete that wasn't working. Anything that's not working, just delete it. Get it off your board, your art board. Oh.
Yeah.
That is it. Let me try one more thing. I'm gonna rotate this guy. I'm going to object transform rotate. And see which one I like. I'm really liking this. So copy and paste. I'm not final on that kind of pink. Not pink but maroon color. Think I like some of the blues little better, but I'm liking the overall concept. I think we're getting there. Okay, oh that's perfect. That's it, and let's find the right color. I don't like the green. So it's between this blue and that dark. Oh, that's it. So I think we've almost found our brand. Let's go ahead and take this on a new canvas and play around with some branding concepts. So once I hone in on kind of a final concept, I open up a fresh new document. I can get all that stuff kind of out of the way. And now we can really kind of finalize everything. So this is kind of what we picked out. All that mess. All the process, and we were able to come up with this. So I'm gonna come up with a couple of variations. Of course we need to have two versions. One that goes in a dark background. And one that can work on a light background. That is absolutely essential to have. So this logo needs to work well on both. So I'm just gonna copy and paste. And I'm gonna go ahead and select this color swatch right here. And so this is gonna be the challenge. Is making this gradient pop out over the white. 'Cause right now it's not enough. It works really well here. But not here. Let's go ahead and zoom in. And see what we could do about it. There is a possibility we can make it all solid color. But I really like this look. Let's go in and darken everything a little bit. Like we did in the past. But let's do it a little bit more accurate. So now that I've established a dark background version, and I was able to kind of tweak and lighten this gradient a little bit to work on a white background, I feel like we got the two main logo types developed. And there's one more option missing. We want to be able to have a non-gradient version as an option for the client, because they may want to do an embroidery or something that does that, where you cannot have the multiple colors of gradients. So I'm gonna explore a couple of swatches. I'm actually gonna take a swatch out of this gradient. I'm just gonna double-click this color. And see this. This is kind of your hex color down here. I'm just copying this. Or you can jot down the numbers of this R. It's an RGB format. Jot down those numbers. And then I can actually highlight this object and double-click on my fill. And I can actually copy and paste that number. Or you can type in manually the RGB here. Oops, we do this as a single color. Let me go my swatches. Let's do red, and then I can go back and copy and paste. This should be that's perfect. And so we can lighten it now. Let's see, lighten it maybe. Or have a little less orange maybe. Can just play around with some options. I like that. It's like got a nice tan color to it. Let's go ahead and zoom out and see what we have. With 3 different options. Here are variations that they could use a single. This is only 2 colors. This is a gradient on a white background. And then we have our dark background. So we have our logo. Pretty much finished. And so the next stage is finding ways to adapt this kind of shape and this font and type to other elements. So we're gonna do a little mock-up business card and kind of see how we can apply this branding to other objects. So here's kind of our mock-up business card. I just kind of did a basic shape using our color swatch. And I'm just going to take the rectangle tool and go ahead and make our swatches. So I can be able to use the eyedropper tool and get them. So there's our gradient that we've been using. And I want to get that solid color. Gold we used on this logo as well. So that kind of tan. Muted brown. And also want to grab over here a logo that I think would work. So let me grab the one on the dark background. And I'm bringing it here and I'm gonna paste it. So how can we adapt a little bit of this geometric shape to the business card? So let's see what we can do here. I'm actually gonna draw a couple of white boxes on the edges. And this is just so I can play around. You'll see kind of where I'm going here. So I'm just gonna do some white boxes. Gonna go ahead and take this element. And I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. We could do something kind of screen back. So I'm just gonna send this back into the layering system. I'm gonna send it to the back. And then I'm gonna send it one more step, or actually send this in the back. This background so that that'll pop up. There it is. Let me screen it back a little bit. We could do a transparency and just screen it back. Like that, or we can make it a solid white. That's looking really cool. So let's go ahead and keep that. So I'm just gonna copy. Just like we did with the logo design. We're gonna copy and paste and try different versions. And once we figure out kind of the front of this business card, in the back with some of the detailed information, it's gonna really set the tone and it's gonna act like a template for everything else we do. And it's a great way to present a logo. When you adapt the logo to another object, like a business card or a letterhead, you can show them how the brand is flexible and how it can adapt in different ways. You're not just showing the logo, but you're showing how we can have the symbol and the geometric shape perhaps play a role. And the design elements could always do that down here. It's playing around with the make this really big, maybe the triangles here. We can also even explore a vertical logo as well, so that if they ever have a more vertical need or space, they can do that as well. So that's an option. And I really like that. I like that to the point where I'm gonna go ahead and grab it and copying it. And I'm gonna paste it with our other versions of the logo. So then I now have a vertical version. And I could now copy and paste and apply our same versions here. Now I have one that could work on a white background. Perfect, okay. So that's an option. I don't really like that one if I'm not in love with it. I don't want to keep it around. What if we put it in the box like that? Okay, let's keep going. I like the horizontal version. So let me do one more of these. Of course we haven't even added texture yet. That's when it gets really fun. Let's add an angle to this. So maybe we do the symbol here. And maybe this gets tucked a little bit to the left. That's an option. And we also could do a bar. We have this tan color we can bring out. We can even make this the gradient. And have it have a little bit of an angle. Down to the left. Adds a nice pop of color that's nice. We can even take our direct selection tool and select this anchor and have a little angle. But I don't like that. 'Cause this is straight up and down. But this one I believe is angled, oops. Grab that, make sure it's perfect, oops. Copy and paste. Hopefully I'm not making you too dizzy by scrolling back and forth. But this is kind of the process of doing some stuff here. So there's the angle. So, just experimenting. I'm just putting that back into the layering system. A couple of steps.
Ah,
That's weird. But I think if I did a better gold texture and Photoshop, I can make that look really cool. Instead of just this flat gradient. I have an idea for that. I'll show you in a little bit. So that's an option. I really like that one actually. I wonder if I can screen this back a little more. Like that tin. So that shape is not so obvious. I don't want it to overpower the logo. But I want people to be able to see it. Let's make this one 8. So there's option 1. Option 2, option 3. So this is the front of the card. We're gonna mess around with the back side of the card. And then we're gonna start to be able to play with textures and really make this thing look finished and polished. So I went ahead and grabbed a few of these little details that we'll probably want to have on our business card. So this is gonna be the back. So I copied all of our fronts and I shifted them to the right just so I can have them available. So now I could take these and create the back. So I want to keep kind of that same element on this side as well. But make the logo smaller. Maybe I don't need this element. Maybe I put it down here well. Let's play around. Let's go ahead and bring in her name. And this is where we have this established already as kind of our main branded font. It's Georgia. But we can have different variations. So we can have all caps. We can type the spacing a little bit on this. And look at this copy and paste and let's get her title. So let's say owner. And we want to have balance. I'm gonna zoom in. We want to have balance with our type on a business card. So we already have a lot of all caps. So let's do tight spacing. Let's go back to 0. Let's do italic if that's available. And let's go back to our character option. And let's take out all caps. And let's also make it smaller in comparison. So you notice how we balance that out really nicely. And I love having dividing lines between blocks of copy. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get a line here. And maybe make it that gold gradient. And we have a nice dividing line to separate information. So let's go ahead and copy this smaller font. And let's see. We want to incorporate kind of the target market in there. So let's take this. Just using the eyedropper tool. And I'm going to. When I click on that. Click on the eyedropper tool, it adapted all of the elements and style of this bond right here. So let me do that again. So I can show you. This is what I had. Selected this object and getting the eyedropper tool. I'm clicking on that. And it automatically inherits the style. So that's great. I'm gonna slide that over. Do I have a bold italic? And I have a regular. So let's do a regular. And let's do. Let's actually say life. Life coaching for CEOs. Business owners and personal coaching. Wish that the client may give you all this information. You may not have to worry about this at all. And I like italic. So let's go back to italic. Let's make this 8-point font. We don't need to have this be very big or overpowering. And I'm gonna go back and I'm adjusting the leading here in my character panel. Nice wide leading is nice, helps it breathe. Zoom out, kind of see what we have here. We can even shift this over to the right side. I feel like it might need a photo of some sort or texture. So I'm gonna go and let's source some textures. See what we have here, make the logo bigger. Even spacing between this little elements. Make it skinnier. Perfect, I think this is really coming along. And so let me go grab a texture. So now that I found a few textures online, this is going to be a great opportunity to show you how to work with both Illustrator and Photoshop. So the textures I grabbed are raster images. They're just photographs of a texture. So you really want to switch back into Photoshop when you're working with raster images. And so I'm gonna actually bring this business card. I'm gonna bring the background into. And all I'm doing is I'm just clicking this rectangle shape. This green color. And I'm just bringing it into Photoshop right now. This is still a mock-up. So we're not doing a final business card yet. So I'm just gonna bring that in here. And I'm going to go ahead and lock. I'm in Photoshop now. I'm gonna lock the layer. So now I'm toggling between Illustrator. And I'm just gonna select only what I want to bring over. So let me select all these objects, oops. And I'm springing them over. This is just a mock-up part. Go ahead and make this little bit bigger. Perfect, so now I have my two textures loaded. Let me make this application get into the monitor. There we go. So I thought this would be a neat texture to have over top the green. To add a little bit more of a richness to it, I'm just dragging it over top. And I'm just gonna go ahead and drag it below my green square here. And I'm just gonna get the magic selection tool. And I'm just selecting. Let me grab my green layer. I'm just gonna be cutting this part out. What I don't need. We go to my layering system. And drag this above the green. And here's where we can play around with blending modes. So let's try. Let's try luminosity. Let's try overlay color burn. Screen, there it is. I like that. And so let's bring in. I also have a beautiful gold texture. And I wanted to play around a little bit with this. So I thought we could do a couple of things here. I'm highlighting the gold texture. And I'm actually going to opacity. And I'm just screening it back. Reducing the opacity so I can see everything. And since we're just playing around here. And you know what I forgot to bring in? I forgot to bring in our cool background. So let me go to Illustrator. Let's bring in our shape over here. And we have our shape, there it is. So let's make like a diagonal cut. I don't know if this is gonna work, but we're just playing around here. Okay, so I got a triangle. I'm actually gonna cut that triangle and paste it back. And then I no longer need this one. So I'm just gonna toggle the visibility. I'm just playing around. And what I thought would be neat is what if I got this again and I put it over my logo. And what I could do is actually. Let's go back in time here. Let me bring in the front of the card as well. So I need to bring this up. Highlight all my layers. Drag it up, oh. I locked it. That's what it did. Let me unlock it. Select everything and shift it up. And I'm actually gonna go ahead and layer duplicate it. And now this will be the front. And I'm gonna delete all these objects. I'm toggling back into Illustrator. And I'm gonna go over to my front side. There we go. Go ahead and bring this, and actually I'm gonna bring these elements in separately. So I got the logo. This is we're just mocking up. And playing around with textures. You'll want to keep the final design and Illustrator. Anytime can keep something in vector format, the better. But I'm just playing around with the idea of adding textures to this. This is really just a mock-up I don't recommend doing any kind of layout or design work in Photoshop because it's not in vector. So this is just to give the client an idea of what it could look like with texture. And yourself as well. So I like that texture. I'm gonna lock that so I don't accidentally grab it. I'm gonna lock that as well. There we go. So let's go ahead and bring this on the top layer, and let's zoom in and let's cut this out. I'm gonna reduce the texture a little bit. There we go. So let's try this. Gonna get the iMagic eyedropper tool. And I'm gonna select our logo shape. Where's our logo shape? There it is. And I'm gonna select it, and I'm going to also subtract the selection's gonna get a little tricky. So I'm going up to here. If you remember, click on subtract. Well, let me see here. Hold down and subtract, or hold down shift. There we go. I'm gonna add to the selection. I'm just trying to cut that out. So then I'm gonna go up to my shape. Press enter. I'm gonna get my polygon lasso tool and just delete the little bit of the texture over the text. So that is an option. We have this cool kind of gold texture over top. And let's make it 100% opacity. And we could take our burn tool and our dodge tool and add a little bit of highlights to this if we wanted to. Or can add a little drop shadow. So what I've come to find out through this little experiment with Photoshop is I really love this gold texture. And I definitely want to integrate that. Instead of having the solid gold color whenever I can. You can't always use a raster image in a logo. You'll have to use maybe a single color sometimes. But as long as the client has options. But I think for most of the print items, I really like this. And that up there too. We can add we can get back our diagonal gold color here. I might have lost, I might need to recreate it. But I had the little bit of a gold here. I'm getting ready to add that back in. Trying to be able to export JPEG texture. So we can utilize those in Illustrator. And keep everything in Illustrator. So one thing we can do is go ahead. And let's isolate everything. So I'm gonna unlock. And isolate these two layers. Let's toggle the visibility on all these objects here. Everything but the background. Oops. There's the background. Go ahead and take that and toggle that. And then toggle that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to crop. I would say crop. Here's my crop tool right here. And I'm just gonna crop the texture. I'm gonna be able to use this texture and all of my branded elements that I'm gonna design in Illustrator. And I'll be able to keep everything in vector format. With the exception of the texture, of course. You scroll up. Down a little bit. Perfect. So now I'm gonna save this as a JPEG. And I'm gonna be able to bring this into Illustrator. And recreate that business card. And put the texture on it. So I'm just saving. Save background texture. Saving it to the desktop and high resolution. I'm gonna do the same thing to the gold texture. So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go ahead and bring that texture. And I actually already have it as a large texture. So I'm gonna bring that back in. And I'm gonna do some of the editing that I did. And I'm gonna go to hue saturation. And I'm just gonna reduce the saturation. Now I can save this as gold texture. And now I'll be able to bring these into Illustrator. And recreate everything. So I have my two textures. As I was able to open up back into Illustrator. And we're able to edit it to our liking. To be able to recreate what we did in Photoshop. So now that we have our textures, I can actually go back and apply them. Just copying and pasting my texture. And putting them on my Illustrator versions. Which is really your final design version. Is gonna be in Illustrator. Because of that nice vector format. Oops. Just arranging it in the layers. There we go. Perfect. I can go back and I can apply this back to it. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this shape. I'm gonna zoom in. Here's another little trick. So I'm zooming into 300% and I have this shape. I want to adapt this texture to this shape. So what we're gonna do is mask it. So we're gonna make this bigger. And we're gonna click on this. Main gold layer. We're gonna hold down Shift. So we're gonna be clicking on this layer too. So we have both of these selected. We're gonna right click. And we're gonna make a clipping mask. So what it's gonna do is gonna take the shape on top of the texture or photo and it's gonna clip it, trim it. So make clipping mask. And here's our gold texture. So now we have our gold texture. And then everything else is in vector format. Which is great. So there we go. Let me zoom out. We're in Illustrator. We have a final business card design. We don't have it sized in its own document yet. But we are getting there. We're really pressing forward on our branding. And let me do one more thing. Let me copy and paste. I'm gonna release this clipping mask. I'm getting my gold texture back. I'm copying and pasting this gem. And let me see if I can't apply that gold texture to this. Do the same thing, selecting both objects. This object's on top. Right-click, make clipping mask. Okay, so I think what we may need to do. We may need to use the Shape Builder tool here and combine these objects. So let me get the Shape Builder tool. Let me go back, let me just select this object. That one, got to be careful about what I select. There we go, perfect. Now maybe it'll let me do it, right click.
Yeah.
So now I have the texture applied as well. If I wanted to add a texture to the logo, I may not, but now I have a texture applied. Got to zoom in really good, always good to have options. Let me make sure that's exact. I can always just select the layer underneath. I could delete the gradient one since I have that. And I can select this and apply a drop shadow. Let me see, I'm gonna go to Effect, Stylize. And this is how you add drop shadows and Illustrator. The little bit different than Photoshop. But the basics are the same once you get into it. They're 44:0. Let me lighten it. Great, and I can select this, and if I go to Effect, it's gonna memorize the last effect I did. So go ahead and do Apply Drop Shadow and it'll memorize your drop shadow settings. So there you have it. I can actually wonder if I can brighten that up. That's why we do things in Photoshop. First is to get our texture. We were able to reduce the saturation and get that texture perfect. So we can bring that into Photoshop and be able to start applying it to our final design. So now we're going to take all of this mess and all of our logo design and assets that we've been building. Go and create one consistent page to present to the client but to also have a reference for certain assets to be able to access for us as we're starting to design other materials. So I'm just going to create a simple 8.5 by 11 document, and you could do it whatever size. I don't need to add lead to this. So I'm just going to make it a 0. This is just going to be. And I'm going to go ahead and make it CMYK color just to have that if I need to. Do any print documents? I can have it in CMYK. So let me go ahead and make it the size of the screen. This is going to be our document. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. So I could start to drag and drop elements that I think would make a good presentation. So in terms of a final logo design, I think we decided to pick this one. So I'm just going to copy and paste. And I think we have our color palette here. But I'm actually going to grab that from here. So I'm not going to worry about anything else here. I think we're done with this one specifically. Let me go ahead and pull up. I have everything in a nice organized folder. And I kind of have our business card design that we were doing. I'm gonna grab a couple of elements. I believe we did a vertical version of the logo. There it is. Go ahead and just grab that one. Copy and paste. And I'm just gonna grab a couple of other objects that I think I'm gonna need. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this business card. Go ahead and get rid of that. And I'm gonna take other side of the business card. Pop that in here. Just kind of grabbing elements we think would be a good part of the brand. And I believe this one was our one on white background. I think we already have. Unless that's the vertical version. Okay, great. Alright, so let's go ahead and start building this out. I'm gonna zoom in ever so slightly. Okay, so what we want to present versus the logo. So this is kind of the logo that we like the best over that dark background. But we also want to present the same one on a white background. So let's slide that over. Let's make it about the same size. The comparison. There's a little bit of a white box there I had. So let's get rid of that. Slide all of these elements out. Here's the vertical version. And what I could even do is do this. So I'm gonna go ahead and extend this background. So it doesn't look like it's in a box. I might make it a little bit bigger just like this. And I'm gonna show the vertical version next to it. So you kind of see the different arrangements that we have. And then now I can able to do the same thing but show how it's flexible. And how it can also exist on a white background. This is gonna be our first page. We can also do this in InDesign if we wanna do. It's easier to do multiple page layouts in InDesign. I'm just still kind of finalizing the logo a little bit as I go about this. I also need to make sure. This is just tweaking our final logo that we have. The final concept. Just making sure the space here. Go ahead, make that a different color. It's gonna be the space here. So I make sure everything is nice and aligned. And it's not. So let's go ahead and select in these elements. I'm just kind of using my arrow key. Kind of aligning it a little bit better. Doing my little trick where I just take the rectangle tool and see if I can't eyeball it. I can be more precise after the project's approved. So that's great. I also want to do the same thing. To the white version, make sure that's a line. So what I'm gonna do is just copy and paste. And just recreate it from this one. That'd be easier than trying to fix that one. Perfect, so that's how we can present the presentation of one concept. Of course we might want to send another concept. But this is the one that I feel like would be a final to send to them. This would be the logo design. And the next page is gonna show them how they can adapt other graphical elements to other objects and other marketing materials. I thought this would be a great opportunity to show you how to use artboards. So right now we just have one 8 and a/2 by 11 page. I want to add a second 8 and a/2 by 11 page that I want to send to the client. So let's go ahead and do. I could do this all in Design. But I feel like since I'm still tweaking kind of the design and kind of a little bit of the lettering and just kind of doing some final tweaks, I want to keep it in Illustrator for right now. So I'm just gonna go to Document Setup. And I'm actually gonna go to Edit Artboards. And so this is kind of your artboard option. So here's my one. This is my first artboard. It's the only one I have. I want to duplicate this. 'Cause I want to take this exact size and make another page. So I'm gonna go up here. This will create a new artboard. So let's go and click on that. When you click on the new artboard, it's gonna automatically do the size of the previous artboard. You to go click once. This is artboard number 2. And I can actually, if I wanted to, I can edit the size of this artboard. And I could just delete it if I no longer want it. So I'm gonna go to Add New Artboard. Have it right next door, perfect. And you can create 20 30 artboards. If you have 30 different concepts or designs that you like to export as individual JPEGs. 'Cause if I were to go and export this as like a JPEG, for example, I'll have 2 JPEGs. I don't have to have separate files and have to save them each as a JPEG. So it's a huge time saver. So I have these elements of her business card. Also have some texture as well. So I'm gonna go to my little folder and bring out the textures that we already used. This gold texture. And go ahead and bring that out. Just dragging it to my Illustrator. And opening it as a new file. Dragging it in. You do the same thing with my little green texture that we made in Photoshop. I do a lot of my texture work in Photoshop because Illustrator really doesn't do a whole lot with textures and raster images. That's what Photoshop's for. I'm just holding down Shift and making it smaller. So I wanted to show the client kind of the 2 texture options they have. That's gonna be this okay. There's also color palette I'd like to show. So let's go ahead and zoom in. We could develop the color palette. So let me go ahead and do a hold down Shift. I'm just gonna make 2 squares. Or I can make 1 square. Just copy and paste it. So we don't have a whole lot of colors going on. Kind of have this green, hunter green color. And we have this gold gradient. I'm sticking the eyedropper tool. And I'm just gonna highlight my gradient so I can show them that it's a gradient swatch we're using. And also I'm just now remembering we also have a solid single color gold color that we need to present to the client as well. So I'm gonna go back and see if I can go ahead and locate it. I think it's right here. And there's the swatch. So I'm just gonna copy and paste it. And there we go. So I have this tan color I also want to present as a solid color option. And what I like to do when I'm presenting color swatches, I like to have gradients on the end. Just so you can see the solid colors together. This is our solid color option. So I'm trying to think if I have room. This is gonna be more of kind of your presentation where you wanna have the nice shiny gold. But you also need to show them that it can exist in one color. So we can go ahead and do that on the second page, where we're presenting the swatches and the textures. So I'm gonna spend a little time labeling a few of these things and, I'm also going to be putting in the RGB amounts for each color swatch. So it can be exact and I can show them kind of. That's a little bit of a science. These weren't randomly picked. But here's the RGB numbers. I'll be right back to show you. Okay, so I'm back. And I was able to kind of add a few more details. And I'm adding some of the color swatch specifics under each color swatch. So right now I have kind of the hunter green established. And I gotta kind of show you how you can access and find out the colors of these swatches. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on this tan gold color. And I'm actually gonna double click my swatch right over here. And it's gonna bring up a color picker panel, if I could say that correctly. So here's kind of where I've got a lot of these statistics. So you could just open this up and just kind of memorize it and type it in. So I'm just gonna copy. This is your hex number. This is gonna be what you use to build websites. When they ask what colors to use. When you're building maybe a WordPress website. This is what they use as the hex color. So that's for the web. When we go back and click and find RGB. So 224, 200 and 148. And just type it in. And I'm just realizing RGB okay. That's correct. Just making sure that's all correct. Same thing for CMYK. You can find these numbers here, the 13, 19 and 46, so I'm just gonna type that in 13. 19 and 36 is great to have. Anything that doesn't have a numbers. Make sure this bouquet is black. So that didn't have any black in it. This is great for print projects. This is great for web or digital projects. And it's great to be able to send this to other designers or people within the company that will be able to expand this brand a little bit further out. And gradients, I don't touch. I just leave them as a swatch, since they have quite a complicated array. Double-click the gradient tab. That's gonna be hard to tell them. So you just have it as a live swatch. And Illustrator, because you'll probably mostly be transferring this to them as a PDF. That's editable or as an EPS or an Illustrator file that how you'd send it. So they'll be able to access that swatch by getting the eyedropper tool. So that's fine. For color palette, just went ahead and just kind of fidused this a little bit. Let me zoom out so you can see. Just having some dividing lines between the elements. And this is gonna be our font. So this is headline font. And then body copy. So the headline font is Georgia. So I'm just gonna copy and paste. And I'm gonna type in Georgia. And I'm gonna put this in the same font as some of our information here. So headline and then body copy. We haven't established that yet. But I'm just gonna do a simple open sans as our body copy. And I'm gonna collapse and says body copy, which is gonna be all your detailed text that you'll use in advertisements and website articles. I'm gonna make that smaller and go up to our character panel. And I'm just turning all caps off. And I'm making this a little bit smaller and making the sentence longer. So you can actually put a full paragraph to show them how the body copy will look. And this is going to be open sans. I'm just gonna copy and paste and label. This is open sans. Perfect. I'm just gonna go ahead and highlight all these. And I'm gonna go to my center align. Just gonna align everything. Let's make it nice. A little spacing between it. And if you have a byline, subline heading, if in a different font, you can also put that any fonts you want people to be able to use. You're basically telling them, in terms of the branding projects, what fonts they are allowed to use to adhere to the branding standards. So this is a branding standards manual. So alternative presentations. We can have this. This is where we can present maybe the single color. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell them what this is. They may not be able to see right away. And I'm gonna do this as single color. Actually, this is two color. Two color, or let's do solid color. And you could even put in parentheses non-gradient color or whatever to describe that different presentation. And another presentation. We can present as black and white here, because it's always good to be able to see any logo in black and white. Just in case, I'm gonna make these little bit smaller. These don't need to be big. They just need to be able to know. They will have alternative files to use that. You went the extra mile to think about different presentations. And that really goes a long way into showing how professional you are. That you're thinking about these other situations that they're gonna need this logo for. So the single color. They're gonna be able to use this for embroidery. Or anything that require that. They cannot reproduce the gradient color into this geometric shape. And this one will be black and white. I could just highlight it all. I'm gonna go down. I'm gonna do it. Go down to edit. Edit colors. This is just a quick way to convert to grayscale. So I'm gonna convert this to grayscale. And that's gonna make it a nice black and white image. I could keep it like this. Or I could start to tweak the logo here. So if I wanted to make this a solid, so right now it did it black and white. But it's still keeping the gradient. So I can actually go back and click on one of these gray swatches over here on my swatch panel. Maybe I like it kind of light to contrast against the dark text. And maybe I have one of these shades to shade lighter like that. Bring this in the front. There we go. So that can be our black and white version. And what's great about this is we can use this when we're starting to build out some of the other marketing materials. It's gonna be easy to grab objects from here and use them. So branded assets. So these are gonna be things that the designer or yourself or someone else in their marketing team can use to be able to build stuff. So we have these two textures. So I'm gonna put, let them know. You can even name these textures something fancy, so, I'm just gonna do something simple. But you can do emerald texture or whatever you wanna. Name it gold texture, oops. Perfect, and we have some other assets. 'Cause we're building out our business card. And we have this little symbol that they can use that screen back. So I'm actually going to make this white. Let me see if I can't just grab the solid color. I'm just gonna copy and paste this to kind of show them how they can kind of use it on any kind of background. Perfect, I might need to make that a little bit. Let's see, the opacity is only on 8%. Let's make it 12. Make it pop out a little bit more. Maybe even more than that, maybe 16. There we go. Just so they could see kind of the different asset that they can use. And right now this is the only asset that we have is this extra element. But as you can see on the business card, we were trying out some different little things here. And actually, I use Georgia here. So this would be great as an alternative font. I'm gonna copy and paste this over here. Make it black or dark gray. I like this italics used. So let me do this. To kind of give them another font option. Let's do subheading. Give them another option for this italic font. Make this horizontal, and this is Georgia italic. Make sure I spelled that right. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. Bring that in as kind of another option headline. Body copies could be much smaller. And your, guidelines could be. Oh, this is gonna be your, subheading spot. Perfect, just kind of detailing all that out. Let's make that the same green. Just go over to our swatch with our eyedropper tool. And make it green. So I think we're pretty much done with the details page. What I would do somehow that got shifted, there we go. So we're done with kind of our assets and different presentations and color palette. So this would be the second page you'd present to them. Along with this kind of main logo page. And if you may have more variations, you may need to do a third page where you really go into detail with different versions. You might have a vertical, horizontal one with a line. It's good to have that. So what I would do last is add a third page. And I would go ahead and plop in perhaps the business card that's finished. And maybe a letterhead. Or maybe a digital ad to kind of show them how they can use some of these assets. So right now they have this asset. But how do I really use it? As a great way to show them that. Okay, here's a great presentation over here. You would show them the business card and the letterhead to show them how these assets are being used. How maybe had this local bar. How you're using all the font and typography. And how you're maybe using the gold textures. And that's it. So now that we have kind of a branding standards manual developed, I'm gonna go ahead and develop a few other marketing materials to show you how easy it is to create things. Now that we've had this manual developed. This manual developed. Let's go ahead and go to File. We're gonna go to Document Setup. And we're just gonna add another artboard. We can start a new one. But just, I wanna show the client how I can use all these assets in developing a letterhead. So this is how easy it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of drag and drop some of these elements that I like. So in terms of the logo, I think I like this one. So I'm just gonna copy and paste. I'm just gonna start building out a letterhead. I'm just kind of gonna go ahead and group this logo together. Make it smaller. And play around with a lot of different option ideas. I'm just getting my direct selection tool and selecting this anchor. I'm just gonna try an angle out. See if I like it. Because our logo has a lot of angles in the symbol. So now this is just now like zooming out. So I can kind of see the whole piece together. And see how it's coming together. Let's go ahead and grab the sediment over here. You can have this kind of go off to the side maybe. And let's make this a really light gray. Not sure if I'm able to see that too well. So let's make it a tiny bit darker. Have the element kind of off to the side or angled here. And what I like to do is just kind of grab a rectangle tool. Just like we did with the business card. I'm just gonna make that white just helps. Helps my eye kind of block out everything that's extending outside of the artboard. See if I like it. Kind of going off to the edge there may be kind of cool. Bring it up a little bit more, this not perfectly center. Might not need the logo as big. We'll get some information on website possibly. Let's go ahead and grab our body copy. Let's do our headline font. So let's grab this what we have for a headline font. Bring this arrange. I'm gonna bring it to the front so it's the top layer. Make it white and okay, so I'm gonna have to just do kind of a just doing some generic information here real quick. Let's do a phone number, let's do an email. Just to kind of see what that would look like. Maybe do a right alignment along the side here. And also do a website. Let's go and grab a website. This is great. Go ahead and doing a few assets when you present. Because you can show them okay. Well, how do you do the website? What font do you use? How does that look? Maybe we keep with that. Subheadline font that we're using. Maybe it's just really simple on the bottom. Maybe it's in a gradient. And then maybe not do it off to the side here. Get smaller. Give people more room to actually put content. You don't want to make a head or too big. 'Cause you need to be practical. Let's do this. But let's do. I don't want to use too much green. Just trying to figure out. Maybe down here would be the best. Maybe keeping it white. Are making that tan. Just not sure, this is when you're playing around with different options. I definitely like it in a box. 'Cause I think it'll disappear with the symbol. And we could play around a little bit, maybe add. Like I think I have an idea here. I'm gonna make that a gradient. And I'm gonna make it go diagonal. So it looks more natural. This is where we might zoom in and do details. And this is something we're putting together really quickly. I would spend a whole lot more time on it. I had a little more time just getting out a bar to kind of set that nicely. Maybe even have contrast here and make his name in the headline font. But smaller. See the nice contrast there? This doesn't need to be quite as big. Let's collapse, just messing with the spacing. There we go, see, that has much more balance to it with the different font styles and sizes. And I think I have an idea. We have these beautiful textures. I grab this gold. It's gonna copy and paste this shape. Let me get some of the darker part of the texture. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a clipping mask. So I'm gonna select my top box. Select my background texture. Right-click, make clipping mask. And so it's gonna mask it. And I'm just realizing I wanna make it a little bit brighter. Let's try that as our box at the bottom. I like to bring out the gold. Because that's the whole theme of the brand, is the gold. Which is where our name derived from. When you zoom out, So I like that. Let me just make sure it's center. And a little trick. I'm gonna do my little rectangle. And I'm selecting both these objects as well as a rectangle. And I'm just gonna do a center align. And then use my arrow keys to kinda bring them back. Just kinda helps me align things a little bit better. And let's make this font our headline font, 'cause I think that's gonna stand out better. And let's make it smaller. That need to be 17 points. Let's make it 12, and let's make it if I have a bold. Beautiful bold option. And so I'm gonna actually release. If you ever want to change a clipping mask, right-click Release Clipping Mask. And it's gonna go back to where it was. And let's get my rectangle here. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna make it bigger and longer to kind of. Now that my font is stretching out more. Maybe right about there. And so now I can select both objects and make clipping mask. And bring that down. And I don't need that red box anymore. And let's add a drop shadow to the text. To make it pop out just a tiny bit more. We just need very subtle effects of 0.1 inches, or she may have different measurements on yours. And let's try out the thin, the regular. That's too thin. So what I can do is I think this texture. Let me zoom in so you can see. I think this texture is too overwhelming, but I like it. So I'm gonna copy and paste. Or actually, I'm gonna take the rectangle tool. Draw a new rectangle on top of it. I'm gonna go up and grab our tan solid color. Let's see. It'll be right here. So I'm just getting the eyedropper tool. And I'm making it tan. Going back in, and I'm just gonna put it on top. And I'm just gonna send it back behind the gold texture. And I'm gonna take the gold texture. And scale back the opacity. And this is a great way to still use a texture. But see, I'm reducing the transparency. So it's showing a little bit of that behind it. But it's making the texture less sharp and less visible. But it's still there. So I like that. And I'm just gonna go click on my appearance panel. And adjust my drop shadow. Make it a little bit stronger. Let's zoom out. 100%. See if we like it. So really quickly. We were able to kind of put this together. And this is just one option. I would definitely play around with some different variations. Maybe the placement of the website needs to be tucked over here. I don't know. Just something to balance it out a little bit. But as you can see, that was really quick to put together. You could put together so many other assets as well. To kind of have a complete package to show them.